Sustainable competitive advantage requires durability. There's a longevity going on there. Transparency. People can see how you have the advantage, or your organization has the advantage. Otherwise, it's an issue. Now, what we see here is transparency is a dual-edged sword. If we make it transparent, we lose that competitive advantage. And that's why I keep saying that the internet and artificial intelligence is not going to provide you with competitive advantage, because you can see what's going on. It's not a knock on the internet. It's not a knock on AI. It's bringing some realism to the concept, especially AI, which first began, by the way, in 1957. So it's been around for a couple of days. Accessibility. If you have real competitive advantage, which is your best practices, it's going to be hard for the competitor to duplicate that. The competitor will have difficult time duplicating that. And of course, there's all sorts of resources going on. This is what real enterprise and business architecture is trying to do. Build competitive advantage. And it's going to be periodic. Things that happen tomorrow, fantastic. We see changes going on, as we move forward. So if we look at a fancy mathematics here, it's not. Sustainable competitive advantage is equal to cost to imitate divided by the total value and the time to imitate. If the time is short and the cost is small, it's easy because there's no competitive advantage. But if the cost is high and the time to duplicate what you're doing is high, you've got some real sustainable competitive advantage. And once again, that's what real enterprise architecture and real business architecture is about. So sustainable competitive advantage takes a long time to duplicate, years to duplicate, costs a lot of money to duplicate, is slow to replicate by others, something that you cherish and you can predict what the results are. Tactical or temporary competitive advantage is what most of the time we see here. It's weeks, fast, replace, or surprise. I need to take a breath here because there's another phrase that we see out here to understand temporary competitive advantage, and that is silver bullets, if that phrase is more comfortable for you. And throughout my history of doing this, there's never ending. All you got to do is X, Y, Z, and you never have to work and think again in your life. So many technologies have been hailed as silver bullets for enterprises, only to be proven to be temporary or disappointing in the real world. Here's 10 examples that probably you have seen and experienced that people have touted to be, this is it. But please notice, once again, come back to the characteristics of what the difference between competitive advantage is and sustainable competitive advantage. Some of these, don't yell at the messenger, okay? I'm giving you examples. And there's always going to be exceptions. No code platforms. We don't need programmers. We don't need analysts. We're just going to put these things in the hands of our stakeholders. I'm not going to use the user word because I never used that, but I just did. And everything's okay. And a little bit more technical, certain languages. In another broadcast, I go through the 117 different programming languages that are popular today in organizations. And of course, we point at the next one to see what's going on. And of course, vendors sometimes tout things a little bit more than they should, okay? And essentially, it's the same issues, not looking at things deeply. Now, let's get a little bit more direct here. Big data. And I'm not yelling at Hadoop or the other things out here. Let me say something that is probably 100% guaranteed and not arguable, but is going to be argued with. You can't take data sludge and turn it into a data swamp, to turn it into a data warehouse, to turn it into a data lake, to turn it into data, to turn it into a data warehouse, et cetera, et cetera. You can't reverse engineer something that wasn't engineered in the first place. Please remember that lesson today. It just is forgotten all the time. But historically, consistently, data is the issue. When I started my career in enterprise activities, technology, we were called data processing. You know what we're doing today? Processing data. The advances have been on the process speed side. Let me say that again. The process speed side. The data is still an issue and always has been and continues to be. We're just processing the bad stuff faster. And you know all the phrases that are out there. Garbage in, garbage out. Graphical QL, enterprise search solutions. You do know that Google is not a search engine. This is not to critique Google. It's to position it. It is a popularity contest engine. The search engine concept that I want you to think about, if you remember back in the olden days to libraries, physical libraries, was the Dewey Decimal System. The key to search is ontological classification systems. I know it's a mouthful. Until we have that, we don't have a search engine. What we have there is a popularity contest engine. And more recently, blockchain for everything. And I'll tell you, this particular one, there has been some loud discussions with some of my colleagues about this one here. Okay. There is no miracles out there. And of course, Industry 4.0, Internet of Things, Web 3.0, 4.0, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Most of these things haven't gotten they get a lot of press here. Now there's two here now that are coming up, and I want to give you some qualifications on here because we don't know yet, but we have a belief. Virtual reality and augmented reality for business. Okay. It is being adopted in some areas, but right now, as far as we're concerned, our organization and myself, the jury's still out. We don't know yet exactly what is going on. And if you talk to my spouse, you know, she'll tell you that I am a toy collector. I've got surrounded me all these headsets and things. And when we were experimenting, I'm not going to mention the name here, when these virtual reality and augmented reality headsets were coming on here, we were partnering with one of the major organizations, technology organizations in the world, to use that to visualize our enterprise architecture maps. And you know, you can sort of, you know, put your hand out there and grab this particular element and put it over here and things like that. All I can tell you right now is we've gone back to other things. And the other one I want to talk about here is number 10, and we'll get to number 11 in just a moment, is automation or robotization. I've been involved in robots and automation for most of my career, not as a sidelight, but as an implementation interest, and some organizations have brought us on to do some of this stuff. And one of the robotic activities that I was working on and putting out massive algorithms and things like that, and written research papers on, and people have adopted some of these things, is on quality assurance and robotic visualization and inspection, where we can use essentially robotics and vision to be able to look at defects a little bit different, especially in a lot of the industries that I was familiar with. And so we're not sure where this is going. And the reason I want to be cautious here is because the smart companies, and there's some smart ones out there, I'm going to mention one in just a moment here, and I'm not making up this group out to be the answer. They recognize that you've got to rethink what you're doing. Again, not pave over the cow paths, but the processes you do with automation or robotization, robotics, is not going to be a one-to-one correspondence from the human being. And you see that right now with these humanoid-like robotics. Some organizations are trying to mimic the look of a human being. And some are saying, no, that's not an efficient way to use mechanization. And one of the things that just happened this week as this broadcast is happening is, if I read the newspapers correctly and some of the research report, Amazon now has more robots in its distribution centers than it has human beings. It hasn't eliminated the human beings. So we don't know where this is going yet. So anytime, by the way, a paper is written or there's a broadcast or there's a presentation, there's a time element involved. And the one we don't know about is this one. Is this going to be another silver bullet? We don't know. We don't know. It doesn't mean there's not smart people out there trying to do stuff. It doesn't say there's not billions, if not trillions of dollars being spent in doing this, but we don't know yet. Don't know. But I'm sure about one thing. The sun's going to come up tomorrow. Okay. And I hope I'm able to see it. And then I'll make a decision the next day as to what is going on. So the key lessons is enterprise technology, okay, is temporary because they fail to account for the complexities of the real world. There is nothing more flexible yet than a human being. There's nothing more fertile yet than a brilliant mind. It may happen, okay? So in the information age, wealth comes from innovation, not optimization. The question is, where does innovation come from? Which is different than optimization. Speed is of the essence. We're substituting bits from atoms all the time. We're making things smarter, I think. We think implement network. What the internet has done, being a little positive here, is shrunk distance and time to zero. Now, on the negative side, the internet has shrunk distance and time to zero. Okay. And that's why our mind is like numb at the end of the day from seeing all this stuff that is sometimes something that we don't want to see immediately. Not that we're ignoring it, but shrinking distance and time to zero is something that we as human beings and our technologies haven't dealt with real well yet. Substitute information for land, labor, and capital. The oil of the future, if you've listened to any of my broadcasts, and I'm going to have a slide on this coming up, the oil of the future is information, processed data. That is the issue. Who has that and who can leverage it the most? We are finding out on a daily basis that no matter what we think, the customer, whoever that is in your organization, in your universe, has the power. And what we're trying to do, and you and I can do this with technology and help the business have one-on-one marketing and mass customization in quantities of one. That's the ultimate thing for us. Now, what we have to start doing is not thinking systems or applications, but thinking functionality.